You are now tuned into the truth frequency.
Your protection from deception. TLR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
You're an enemy combatant of the United States of the New Globe. I will not read you your rights. You don't have any rights. You will be detained indefinitely. Say goodbye to life as you know it. Say goodbye to life as you know it.
And welcome to Waking Up the Masses. I am your host, Robert Bruce. Welcome, my friends. Secret societies. What is your initial reaction? What is your initial reaction? Do we not all in our day and time get this idea of some evil going on? Somebody in some back smoky room, someone doing something against the freedom and liberty of men. Could it be that this is propaganda? Could it be that this is propaganda and this is something that we have allowed to be injected into, shall we say, those of us that do research, into our belief system? And how has it become so? And let's just be honest. There are secret societies throughout history that have not been for the betterment of men. But it seems that some researchers over the past century, 2 centuries, 3 centuries, and even more, have pointed a finger. They have pointed a finger at certain groups in order for us to get this belief that we have these guys worshiping devils and demons and all these crazy things. But why? You know, it's an excellent question to ask. Why has this gone on? Could it be that certain entities have perpetuated this belief that we have some Baphomet worshiping group of devil worshippers that are doing this? And even some, just to speak of the Baphomet, even the image. When you say Baphomet, what do you get? You got the horned, the androgynous horned beast with female breast and got the goat head, so forth and so on. When that in itself has been a propaganda that was perpetuated in the 1800s by Elias Levy. But secret societies, have they been for the enhancement of men? I believe so. I believe on a bigger level, on a larger scale, we have had many groups which have been about the freedom of men. And what institutions have pushed forth that idea that they're not? So many books have come out over time, such as, and in the conspiracy research community, I'm sure you've heard, you hear cult theosophy. Is that what it is? A cult theocracy there? Is that, I think that's it, a cult theocracy, where you have so much disinformation that's put out. And in my last live show, I want to apologize. Family members being sick, holidays, I have not been around. I will be around on a regular basis now, this year, 2016. But in my last episode, I got into the idea of Albert Pike. The 3 World War. This is one place that we can find some of this disinformation. The 3 World War conspiracy, which turns out was a bunch of crap anyway, as well as the whole Luciferian doctrine, which was perpetuated by an individual who did it as a prank for well over a decade by the name of Leo Taxel. Could it be that there are institutions that have perpetuated this lie, that all secret societies are evil? And could it be truly that what we're looking at is, who takes on these ideas, who perpetuates them? Are they these extremist, fundamental religious individuals? Not all individuals that are religious are extremist and fundamentalist. But it does seem to be that the ones that are fundamental and extremist want to adopt religion and use it. A lot of the conspiracy theories that came about during which we still perpetuate in this time, we still repeat, from Edith Miller's book, from a lot of these guys, they do come from the Catholic Church. They do come from the Catholic Church, and that seems to be the Catholic Church and the aristocracy. That seems to be who were the bad guys in the 1700s, in the 1800s, and still even to this day and time. And I've been duped. I've been duped over time about some of these guys. And so what do? We look away. This is the whole dualistic mind control thing. The evil, you're good, I'm evil, I'm good, you're evil, back and forth over and over again. So what do? We look away. We don't truly, we pick and choose. We pick and choose as well. We don't truly look at, shall we say, the full context of what a lot of these individuals write. Manly P. Hall, when talking about secret societies, he said the ancient philosophers believed that no man could live intelligently who did not have a fundamental knowledge of nature and her laws. Before man can obey, he must understand, and the mysteries were devoted to instructing men concerning the operation of divine law in the terrestrial sphere. Few of the early cults actually worshipped anthropomorphic deities, although their symbolism might lead one to believe they did. Is that not what we do? Oh, they're worshiping Baphomet, they're worshiping the devil. He goes on to say they were moralistic rather than religionistic, philosophic rather than theologic. They taught man to use his faculties more intelligently, to be patient in the face of adversity, to be courageous when confronted by danger, and to be true in the midst of temptation, and most of all, to view a worthy life as the most acceptable sacrifice to God, and his body as an altar sacred to the deity. But these guys are evil. These guys are evil. Of course they're evil. Yeah, I mean, so much, hey, dualism, I say dualistic mind control, dualism is not necessarily a bad thing. Some of the ancient dualism, you had so many different kinds, but some of the ancient dualism, it was, on a base level, you had the materialistic and the spiritual. And then certain groups, they took it, they ran with it, such as the Manichaeans, that believed that everything in the material world was an evil thing, that some ancient demiurge created, some ancient demon created everything in the material world, so it was bad, and everything in the spiritual world was good. Manly P. Hall goes on to say, he says, as the sense perceptions of the individual increase, however, man gains an ever greater control over his various parts, and the spirit of life within gradually attains freedom. These are things he was talking about, these ancient secret societies, how they worked, what their machinations were, how they operated, how man was, and to use the term, raised up. How he had this symbolic death. What was that symbolic death? It was the death of ignorance. It was the death of fanaticism. It was the death of belief in, what would you call it, man? What would you call it? This death in the belief of the myths. And raised up in logic, raised up in reason. Because if I can remember right, sometimes I have a problem remembering certain quotes because I read so many of them, man. I'm trying to remember a quote from Voltaire. I have it written down here somewhere where I I can basically say Voltaire. He said that reason, and of course everybody gets this idea that Voltaire was an atheist. They get this idea that Voltaire was this awful atheist and everything, but if I'm not mistaken, Voltaire, let's see here, Voltaire believed, I'm trying to find the exact quote, but I do not have it in front of me, so I'll just paraphrase. Voltaire believed that there can be no, that belief in deity actually pushes you towards this idea of believing that reason and respect of nature, so forth, are based in a belief of God. Here we go. It says, it is perfectly evident to my mind that there exists a necessary, eternal, supreme, and intelligent being. There is no matter of faith, but of reason. This is no matter of faith, but of reason. But what have some of the conspiracy researchers, such as Edith Miller and others, what have they told us? Oh, Voltaire was this awful atheist, that he was perpetuating evil, so forth and so on. And you can look at some of his quotes, like, you got to lie like lie, and sometimes lie like the devil. But Voltaire did believe in a deity. And he says, and as he says, it is no matter of faith, but of reason that there is a God, if you want to call it that. An all-knowing being, so forth and so on. Voltaire also said if God did not exist, it would be necessary to invent him. And so many take pieces. Many individuals take pieces, they take certain parts, and like I said, they just run with them. They just run with them. But what was Voltaire opposing in his day and time? Yes, Voltaire was part of certain secret societies, the Lodge of the Nine Muses, which he was brought into, initiated into by a man named Benjamin Franklin. But what was Voltaire opposing in his day and time that would be the papacy and the aristocracy? The king and the pope. And so people will, and of course, naturally, there's going to be this pushback by those individuals to say, hey, this guy is an atheist, this guy is a bad guy. But what can we find? We can find where Voltaire says God gave us a gift of life. It is up to us to give ourselves the gift of living well. My. During the Middle Ages, Manly P. Hall said alchemy, once again to go back to where did a lot of these teachings from? Were secret societies the basis of our show today? Were secret societies bad, or were they teaching something different? Have we taken the exoteric and ran with it and not looked at the esoteric? Manly P. Hall says during the Middle Ages, alchemy was not only a philosophical science, but also a religion. Those who rebelled against the religious limitations of their day concealed their philosophic teachings under the allegory of gold making. In this way, they preserved their personal liberty and were ridiculed rather than persecuted. Here we go again with the exoteric and the esoteric. Many people have taken alchemy to believe, the alchemists, they were learning how to make gold. Whereas, no, they were concealing this idea of liberty for all men, freedom for all men and women under this allegory of gold making. What was gold? Gold was that perfect, raised up human being. So they made fun of them. They made fun of them, these crazy nuts believing they can make gold, when that gold was the freedom, the true, free, liberated man who was living, who would live according to the way the Creator set him forth to live. Oh man, but we have continued, and I almost feel like sometimes that I've wasted years with a lot of my research, because I did get into your Edith Miller books. I got into tons of different books that pointed this finger saying these guys are the devil. These guys are evil. But what happened? What happened? We go back to the ancient secret societies, whether it was the Egyptian mysteries, the Persian mysteries, the Grecian mysteries, even the Scandinavian mysteries of Odin and Baldar. And we find over and over and over again this mystical death, not this mystical, this symbolic death and resurrection. The symbolic death and resurrection. And see, this is where I believe that sometimes strong theosophical beliefs sort of collide, and they start having a problem with what is being taught, because when you start going through this, people start saying, oh, well, you're just ridiculing Christianity, so forth and so on. I'm not saying there never was a man named Jesus. I'm not saying he did not teach what he did. I'm not even saying he didn't do the miracles that he did. But I am saying that we can find the story over and over again that's been perpetuated in secret societies. And even in the whole Christmas, I really wish I could have done a Christmas show. It's fascinating to look at some of these things, such as Odin. You know, Odin was, he was an actual man. This was an actual, I can't remember his name. It started with an S, but given the name Odin, the actual historical figure. But we get into the mythological part, the symbolic part, and this guy was hung from an evergreen tree. Where do you get those ornaments from? Yeah, the whole Christmas thing, we're not going to get into that tonight, but that's fascinating. You know, you go back to the Siberian shamans and a lot of the stuff they did with the drying of the mushrooms and so forth and so on, the reindeer and eating them and the blah, 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 blah. It's fascinating. It's fascinating, but hey, that knee-jerk reaction, that knee-jerk religious extremist reaction that comes from a lot of this stuff is to say, oh, those awful pagans, those awful evil people, how they were just co-opting it. They were just co-opting. They were just, you know, they were trying to take it over. They were trying to mislead people, because there's only one true individual that was actually raised up, you know, such as the allegory and the symbolic story of Hiram Abiff. Manly P. Hall once again talking about secret societies. He says, our world is ruled by inflexible laws, which control not only the motions of heavenly bodies, but the consequences of human conduct. These universal motions, interpreted politically, are impelling human society out of the state of autocracy and tyranny to freedom. The motion is inevitable. Excuse me, H2O break there. The motion is inevitable, for the growth of humans is a gradual development of mind over matter. And the motion itself represents the natural and reasonable unfoldment of the potentials within human character. Now let's stop for a second. We have to remember, this is one thing that the theocracies of the world, whether they be Christian, Islamic, so forth and so on, even Buddhist, have tried to stop. They have tried to stop that unfoldment of the potentials within human character, because if you do that, you can no longer be the sheeple. Because if you do that, your human potential, if it expands, you can no longer be the sheeple. It is impossible to sit back and continue to be the sheep. He said, those who attempt to resist this motion destroy themselves. And yes, you become slaves. To cooperate with this motion, though, and to assist nature in every possible way to accomplish of its inevitable purpose, is to survive. Thousands of years before the beginning of the Christian era, many enlightened thinkers discovered the will of God as expressed through nature in the affairs of men. They made known these discoveries in terms of religions, philosophies, sciences, arts, and political systems. And yes, my friends, they did them within secret societies, gave them symbols that the uninitiated would not necessarily understand, but they were meant. See, here's the thing. They were meant for people to eventually understand. And this is where a lot of these secret societies went wrong. They went bad. They began to, how would you say, they wanted people to stay in the exoteric. They wanted them to worship the phallus. They wanted them to worship the sun. They wanted wanted them to stay deeply enmeshed in, even as enlightened as they thought they were, they wanted them to stay deeply enmeshed in just the continuous day-to-day regular stuff that kept them being the sheep. I mean, think about the whole Buddhist concept. Think about this. How many people say, I'm a Buddhist, I do yoga and meditate every day. It's like, hey, did you see what Buddha said after 7 years? No, not necessarily the words of Gautama, but what did he say? Hey, this is a bunch of crap. This is a bunch of crap. Why am I doing this? He realized that all these practices were nothing more than another stage of enslaving himself, and as Manly P. Hall says, not being able to, or he talks about unfoldment of the potentials within the human character, they put themselves in a dead end, in a cul-de-sac of just doing the same old stuff every single day. And I believe this is what we have done within the research community as far as looking into stuff. We adopt people. We take people on. We take other researchers on. And we end up only within their little cul-de-sac. Just riding around in a circle. Hey, I'm figuring it all out. I'm riding around in a circle. Occult Theocracy, I'm riding around in a circle. All these different books. Then we never look at the people that they're pointing fingers at. We take their words for it. We do like the old Christians, or even in this day and time, hey, some of the modern day Christians that know a few Bible verses and they call themselves a Christian, or some of the individuals in Muslim countries that will constantly just be told a few verses they can't read, or even back in ancient days, the way they couldn't read. And they believed it. And they believed it. Excuse me. The Greek lawgiver Solon declared that the ideal state laws are few and simple because they have been derived from certainties. In a corrupt state, laws are many and confused because they have been derived from uncertainties. In a corrupt state, laws are many and confused because they're derived from uncertainties. These corrupt laws are like a web of a spider that catches small insects but permits the stronger creatures to break through and escape. Where there are many laws, there is much lawlessness. And men come to despise and ridicule the restraints that are imposed upon freedom of action. Corrupt laws resulting from the efforts to amend inadequate legislation by further inadequate legislation reveal a general ignorance of right and wrong. Where such ignorance exists, the ideal function of democracy is impossible and liberty degenerates into license. The half-truth is the most dangerous form of lie because it can be defended in part by incontestable logic. Wherever the body learning is broken up, the fragments become partial truths. We live in a day of partial truths, and until we remedy that condition, we must suffer the inevitable consequences of division. According to the ancients, religion, philosophy, and science were 3 parts of an essential learning. Not one of these parts is capable, if separated from the rest, of assuring the security of the human free state. A government based upon 1 or even 2 of these parts must ultimately degenerate into tyranny, either of men or tyranny of opinion. And it is because of this that we have many secrets, and it is because of these ideas. That was another quote from Manly P. Hall there. It is because of these ideas that we have had the rise of secret societies. That we have had the rise of many secret societies that brought this about. We ridicule Adam Weishaupt, and yes, I can say there's many things that you can look at Weishaupt and say, this guy was kind of maybe off his rocker a little bit. Maybe he had some false delusions of grandeur, so forth and so on. But what was he fighting against in the day? Once again, we'll take certain quotes. When Weishaupt said, we need to have the abolishment of the family, what could he have been talking about? Could this be the kings and queens and their family, and as they continued over time to just keep passing down their inbred tyranny, the abolishment of the church. And what was that church in the day and time? It was a tyrannical state, a tyrannical papal state. I'll remind you what Adam Weishaupt, an individual talking about Adam Weishaupt by the name of Thomas Jefferson said. He said, as Weishaupt lived under tyranny of despots and priests, he knew that caution was necessary even in spreading information and the principles of pure morality. He proposed, therefore, to lead the Freemasons to adopt this object, to make the object of their institution the diffusion of science and virtue. He proposed to initiate new members into his body by graduations, proportioned to his fears of the thunderbolts of tyranny. This was given an air of mystery to his views, was the foundation of his banishment and the subversion of the Masonic order, and in the color for the ravings against him of Robeson, Berulle, and Morse, whose real fears are that the craft would be endangered by the spreading of information, reason, and natural morality among men. This subject being, Jefferson goes on to say, this subject being new to me, I have imagined that if it to be so to you also, you may receive the same satisfaction in seeing which I have had in forming an analysis of it. I believe you will think with me that if Weishaupt had written here in this country, where no secrecy is necessary in our endeavors to render men wise and virtuous, he would not have had to do it through the secret machinery for that purpose. Be right back here in a few minutes on Waking Up the Masses, guys. Hang in there.
Warning. Warning. The following message will destroy your paradigm. Proceed with caution. The apocalypse is upon us, brothers and sisters. The great revealing is now. The people have spoken and will no longer be manipulated by snake oil salesmen, masquerading as talk networks and alternative media. The new standard is set. This is the line in the sand. Stand with us to fulfill the mission to raise the consciousness of humanity. Stand against us and be exposed by the light we shine. We are TFR, your 100% listener-supported station, and the last bastion of unadulterated truth. Join the media shift by becoming a TFR supporter today, and send a clear message that the mission will not be jeopardized by corporate greed. Together, we will stand as protection from deception.
This election campaign, Live Free FM would like to remind you how important it is that you get out and vote for nobody. Nobody is an honest politician. Nobody will put your needs before his political desires. Nobody will keep his campaign promises. Nobody will put an end to the invasive and creepy NSA spying program. Nobody will lower your taxes. Nobody truly is a man of the people. Nobody cares about you, and nobody has all the answers. Cast the only vote that really means anything. Vote for nobody. If nobody wins, everybody wins. For more information on how you can vote for nobody, tune in to Live Free FM Sunday nights on the Truth Frequency Radio Network. This message approved by nobody. You're a busy podcaster, not a web designer, but you know, without a professional website to send your guests and listeners to, your podcast will not get the attention it deserves. Having a great website is crucial to the success of your podcast, but it can also be a major headache, not to mention a drain on your wallet. You need a service that's easy to use, gives you a great website, and hosts your podcast files all in one place. You need BlastPod from Podcast Blastoff. Far from just another WordPress platform, BlastPod was built from the ground up by podcasters for podcasters. BlastPod is your all-in-one podcasting solution that gives you the ability to podcast like the pros. Sign up now and get access to your BlastPod website today. Putting the power of podcasting into the hands of the people. podcastblastoff.com.
Radio Ranch with Robert Sales, Monday through Friday on Truth Frequency Radio.
And we are back here on Waking Up the Masses here on Truth Frequency Radio. And the quote I was reading there was from a letter written by Thomas Jefferson, where he believed that if Weishaupt had been in this country, there would not have been a need for secret societies, for a secret society for him to do it through. But to go back pre-Revolutionary War, there were secret meetings. St. Andrew's Lodge. The St. Andrew's Lodge where the Tea Party was planned. Which gives rise to a question. Are they needed now? Because you will find that many secret societies in the past and even in ancient times came together but because they knew the kings and queens of the religious theocracies of the time had no tolerance for their ideas of freedom. They had no tolerance for their ideas of freedom. So they needed a place to talk. They needed a place to plan. And of course, many of these things were co-opted. It's just plain and simple. Many of these things were co-opted and they were degenerated and they were used into objects of subversion. But in our day and time, could there be a need for these things? Could there be a need for those allegories? Such as the ancient, well, not necessarily ancient, but in older times, the so-called alchemist that everybody ridiculed. Said, oh yeah, these guys believe that they're making gold out of base metals. When in reality, they were trying to put man in his original primitive condition of being free. Well, this is what Adam Weishaupt talked about. You will find many of the things that they ridicule Weishaupt for is his personal life. And of course, this will be one thing the character assassins on the internet, of course, you will find go after people. They put out some pretty good research a lot of the times, and they will ridicule them. They get into their personal life. Which, hey, man, there's plenty of people out there that you don't have to get into their personal life. They do a lot of crap. They talk a lot of crap, and they deceive a lot. It's right in front of our face. We can see it every day. It pops up. Sometimes it takes others a little bit longer to find out who the deceivers are. I've got a pretty good eye. On who the deceivers are. I find it's better to just put out your own information, but there's plenty of them out there. There are plenty of them out there, but a lot of the times people that put out good information, there is the whole character assassin. Do we not all have things in our closets? Do we not all have things in our closet which we'd rather other people not know? And I'm sure Weishaupt was no different. Adam Weishaupt was no different. But he constantly talked about the freedom of man, putting man back in his original state. And this is one thing you'll find. One thing you'll find, they say, oh, he wanted us to go back to primitive man and be like savages. Is that really what he was talking about? And I throw this out there for you to examine and think about for yourself. Is this what he was talking about? Or was that primitive state, that state of man being free? Such as in that symbolic Garden of Eden of man being free, man being unfettered by all kinds of crazy vices and governments and this, that, and the other thing. So I take it back. Is there a need for these kind of secret societies in our day? In our day and time? I believe there is. I truly believe there is, because you can post all the stuff you want on the internet. We can do all these broadcasts we want to. But still, there are those individuals that have understand the machinations of secret societies, and they do to this day use them for bad. It is no big secret that the lodges began to be used in France by individuals that took advantage of other individuals that believed that they wanted to be free. They believed that they wanted to get past this whole idea of living under the monarchy and living under the papacy. Now along come your Jacobins. And along came a spider that said down beside her. Along come your Jacobins, and they start co-opting these things to bring about awful bloodshed. See, that's where we have to watch out. That is truly where we have to watch out. Sometimes our desire for freedom can lead us to barbarism. Sometimes our desire for freedom can lead us to barbarism. And sometimes, as Voltaire said, those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. Hitler had this whole absurdity. He had everybody believing it was a big Jewish conspiracy. I know a lot of you out there believe it. He had everybody believing it was a big Masonic conspiracy, and these two groups were persecuted in Germany. There are plenty of good Masons. There's a lot more Masons that are good people than bad. I believe that their teachings have become watered down over time. Their teaching, they just sort of become a very, very thin presentation of the mystery schools. But at one time they weren't. At one time they were about the sciences. As Voltaire put it into play, it wasn't Voltaire, it was it Solon? That had this idea, the Roman philosopher Solon, that had this idea that that according to the ancients, that religion, philosophy, and science are three parts of the essential learning. And that you can't have one without the others. You have one, you're incomplete. You have two, you're still incomplete. And it ultimately degenerates into tyranny either of men or of opinion. So originally, Masonry, just like many secret societies, theirs was about all three of these things. Because when you just have one, you become fanatic. You become a fanatic. You will find many atheists that get into just complete philosophy. They become fanatics. Those that just view science, they become fanatics. Or those that just view religion, they become fanatics. You can see it now with the global warming. You can see it now with certain individuals that follow Islam or certain individuals that follow Christianity. You will find the fanaticism and eventually how it leads to tyranny. But secret societies, as we're talking about today, are they a good thing or a bad thing? Another bit of disinformation we've been led to believe is that GSP Mazzini was this awful, terrible individual. I find in my readings of his works, Mazzini would be seen as a libertarian in our day and time. Mazzini would be seen as a libertarian in our day and time. But Mazzini was part of a group called the Carbonari. Carbonari, it's believed these guys go back to Scotland, so forth, in their myths and in their writings. The Carbonari, that would be the charcoal burners, that they originated in Scotland, made their way to France. You find them in Italy. And the section I'm going to read to you here is from their head lodge in Italy in the 1800s known as the Alta Vendita. And this is some of their beliefs, and it's interesting how you find their idea of freedom for men hidden within their symbols. Now you will find, you're going to read Occult Theocracy, read other books, you're going to find that, of course, everything they do is evil. Of course, there was competition within these things. There's always competition among men, and some men take it too far. And some men take it too far. But from one of the books of the Alta Vendita, they say, and remember, Commonarism was also called Forest Masonry because they used a lot of symbols that had to do with trees and stuff. I'm going to read you a section of their doctrine. It says, the trunk of the tree, quote, the trunk of the tree which you see expresses the surface of the earth on which the good cousins, that's what they call themselves, are dispersed. It denotes also the sky spread equally over it, and it shows us that our wants are equal and our interests the same. The roots of the tree mark its stability. Its green foliage and the strength by which it resists the storms show that it never grows old. As our first parents, after losing their innocence, covered their shame with leaves, the good cousins conceal the faults of their fellow men, and particularly those of the society. The white linen in which you have been received is the product of a plant which has been transformed by labor. So we too should purify and cleanse ourselves by continual effort. As we were wrapped in linen when we were born, so we will regenerate to virtue. Water cleansed us when we came from the womb. It teaches us here to purify ourselves from vice in order to enjoy the pleasures of virtue. Salt, which preserves things which deteriorate, warns us to keep our hearts from corruption. The crown of white thorns placed upon our heads reminds us to be cautious in movements and actions to avoid the pain of being hurt. The cross foreshadows our labors, the persecutions, and the death which threaten those who would be virtuous. We should emulate our Grand Master Christ, who willingly suffered death to bring us nearer to salvation. The earth buries the body. Thus should the secrets of our sacred order be buried in our hearts. It is most important symbol of our association. The uninitiated spread snares for us. They are perverse enough to mistrust our associations, the very instrument of their redemption and happiness. And were they to penetrate our secret, they might force us to sustain an unequal combat. The latter shows the virtue can be attained only step by step. The bundle of sticks denote the members united in peace. The ribbons express faith in the form of charcoal, which is black. Blue is the smoke and stands for hope. Red, which is the fire, is for charity. The specimen of wood, which is the badge of the apprentices, is to be fastened to their coats at the buttonhole by a tricolor ribbon. So forth and so on. I won't get in. They don't get into any more symbolism there. There's another writing that comes through. It says the cross is to crucify the tyrant who persecutes us, just to show you the other side. Again, hey, we'll show you the good and the bad. They say the cross also stands for the tyrant who persecutes us. The crown of thorns is to penetrate his head. The thread is the cord to lead him to the gallows. The ladder will help him to climb them. The leaves are nails to pierce his hands and feet, and the pickaxe will bite into his breast and shed his impure blood. The axe will sever his head, just as that of the wolf who disturbs our labors. The salt will preserve the head, and a reminder, and so forth and so on. So, and I believe in this, there's also an allegory to see. And this would be in their second degree of initiation. So up and up it goes. But the Kabanari, their expressed idea was for the freedom of men. It was for the freedom of men. Now, was it used for that the whole time? I believe no. Men are not perfect. As much as these secret societies were about the perfection of men, about liberating men, about bringing freedom, liberty, liberty, equality, fraternity, I believe that yes, they make mistakes. But many of the conspiracy researchers have latched onto those mistakes. They have latched onto those mistakes and pointed only at that. And of course, once again, we go to the writings of Leo Taxil. We go to the writings of Leo Taxil, who perpetuated a big hoax, which we get a lot of the Luciferian doctrines. I have read writings by certain individuals that talk about Mazzini poisoning this guy and then giving him an antidote after he agreed to what Mazzini said, which is nothing more than another hoax brought about by Leo Taxil, such as the 3 World War hoax, originally perpetuated by William Guy Carr, and even Carr tells you these are just what he thought, that the First World War I and World War II were about. And that World War III that William Guy Carr talked about was supposed to happen in the 1950s. Did it happen? No. But we still perpetuate it. We still talk about it. We use it in our research. Could it be that we just like talking about the outlandish? I believe that people like it. I really do. I find that people like the emotional and the outlandish stuff. They get this whole, they need the fear. They need to feed the beta male and beta female inside of them. Such as why they listen to individuals like Alex Jones, why they follow people that get over emotional and get the fervor going. Only through logic and reason. Only through logic and reason, my friends, can we truly grasp our divine right of freedom and liberty. That's my belief. That's my belief, because an over-emotional mind, an over-emotional soul, we become fettered. We become pulled in many different directions, and dualistic mind control is able to take hold. It's able to take hold. I mean, look at society now. Look, Bill Cosby's bad, and we got to wipe everything he ever did away. But do we do this to individuals like, let's say, Bill Clinton, Charlie Sheen, Woody Allen? Woody Allen, this guy's a pedophile. He was having sex with his stepdaughter, who was 15 years old, while he's still married to his wife. But he still got to make movies. Or could it be even farther to the root of things, of needing hero worship, of needing this pop culture, of needing these things that they have perpetuated upon the minds of men in order to keep us separated? And even farther, in every little nook, in every little place, such as the Alex Joneses of the day, where they need someone to divide the masses in order to conquer them. And this is the need, I believe, that in the past and in our day and time, for certain secret societies that are willing to work for the benefit of mankind. Because why are they there? Why would they have to be secret? Why would they have to be secret? Because there is a ruling tyranny that will not allow certain things to perpetuate. This is one reason, my friends, this is one reason that, along with certain alliances, I believe, just from doing research, but this is one reason that the colonies here were able to throw off the yoke of British tyranny. Why? Because many of them did things in secret. It is one reason that freedom was starting to take hold in 18th century France, until certain groups started to, through perversion and through, as Solon was talking about, you had to have 3 parts, religion, philosophy, and science, through separating these things and degenerating society eventually. This was one reason in the 1800s France that freedom was starting to take sway. Never had that happened the way it did. Never had it happen the way it did. But the form of government that took place in this country, I know a lot of these guys are slave owners. I understand that. Slavery is a bad thing. It's always seemed to be this plague that's been on society throughout the world. Not good. You know, I'll just say it right now, it's not good. But putting that aside, many of the men that you will find that we call the Founding Fathers did things in secret. They made plans in secret. If it had not been for this, their plans would have failed. Their plans would have failed. So we have to examine these things. We have to look deep and see, is this, are we going to continue to believe the absurdities? As Voltaire said, once again, I'll quote it again, those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. This sounds like the modern day media. This sounds like the modern day media. Another quote of Voltaire's that I always like: man is free at the moment he wishes to be. Man is free at the moment he wishes to be. But we have to have a machine in order to, some kind of machinations that we're able to act upon this freedom. And if we don't have this, then what are we going to do? We're going to keep running in that loop. We're going to be the gerbil on the wheel, just going around and around and around. I'm getting somewhere, I'm going somewhere, but in truth, we are truly not. In truth, we are really not. So I know it's been sort of a loose-knit show about secret societies, and have they always been? Have they always been good or bad? I think we can find. A lot of them have been good, and some have been bad. I think we can find where things that were initially, such as the Aleutian Mysteries, which were initially about bringing man to this logical, reasonable idea of perfecting himself, making himself a better human, were initially degenerated into orgies and, the Bacchalian orgies and all kinds of stuff that happened. The Egyptians, with their mysteries, which all men were originally welcome to, eventually becoming only about the royalty. To quote Jefferson once more, when he was talking about Adam Weishaupt, he said, Weishaupt believes to promote the perfection of the human character was the object of Jesus. That was his intention, was simply to reinstate natural religion, and by diffusing the light of his morality to teach us to govern ourselves. His precepts of love of God and love of nature, and by teaching innocence of conduct, he expected to place men in their natural state of liberty and equality. Jefferson goes on to say, he says no one ever laid a surer foundation for liberty than our Grand Master, Jesus of Nazareth. Jefferson says that Weishaupt believes that the Freemasons were originally possessed of the true principles of the objects of Christianity, and have still preserved some of them by tradition, but much disfigured. So could it be also those Freemasons that became corrupt, that pointed the finger at Weishaupt, to make Weishaupt look like this nutcase and this bad guy? So I ask you, as we look at all these things, could we be wrong? I have come to learn over the past few months I have been wrong about many things in researching secret societies. When we point our fingers and say all these awful demonic groups, we should look deeper as we point our fingers and look at the group, such as, once again, the idea of Baphomet. The idea of Baphomet perpetuated in our day and time is not the Templar Baphomet. The original Templar Baphomet was simply shall we say, an exoteric view of esoteric dualism, and the healthy kind of dualism, of masculine, of feminine, of material, of spiritual, so forth and so on. But of course, with everything that gets into dualism, it can be taken, it can be twisted, it can be misconstrued, and eventually you can have someone such as the Manichaeans, where they start believing Manes, the Mani, the Manichaeans, where they start getting into this idea that everything around us, and this is something that eventually made it into the church. The Paulicians also believed this stuff. The Bogomils believed this stuff. This idea that everything material is bad and made by something evil, and everything spiritual is good. I believe we have become very primitive in our belief in this day and time. Primitive in a bad way. Primitive in a bad way. I believe we've become very primitive in our belief in this day and time, and this has allowed us to, and forced us in a way, to look at secret societies in an extremist idea, in an extremist light, where we examine all of them to be something evil, where we examine all of them to be something to be avoided, and all their teachings to be avoided. How can man, I'll just leave you with this, how can man and woman push back something that's offering them knowledge, that's offering them wisdom, and remain, just remain fixed? It's just fascinating to me how we have remained fixed in fanaticism, in theological fanaticism in our day and time. I'm not knocking religion or beliefs, but the idea, the whole extremist me, my side idea. And you'll find it. Hey, I find everyone in this day, I believe it's a program, it's a template. You find it, people take on when they want to research in the secret societies, they take it on. Many people that try to take on new ideas, it always becomes very solidified within themselves that they are completely right and no one else is right, only them and their side. And then it eventually leads to infighting within their own group. They form their own little peculiar ideas, and then they'll infight with each other. This is a program. This is a program that has been a dualistic mind control program that has been purposely put forth. And this is one of the downfalls of secret societies. This is one of the downfalls, but I believe one of the gifts they've given us is, if we look closely, those ideas that have to do with the perfection and the improvement of mankind. And that's the bulk of what they've taught over time. Every once in a while you get somebody like Skull and Bones laying down in a coffin and choking the chicken. No good. But we see the people that come out of that. Take care. Have a good weekend. Peace.